Hello everyone and welcome back to the nerdiest channel on YouTube, the 1138 Nerd Herd. The channel where we discuss, debate, talk about, and review comic books, superhero movies, and pop culture in general. Once again, I am your hard-hitting host, Cascio Pistachio, and in this issue of the 1138, we're continuing with part 2 of our 12-part series review of Black Hammer. Black Hammer is a Dark Horse Comics publication written by Jeff Lemire, illustrated by Dean Ormston, and colored by Dave Stewart. For those of you just joining us, if you missed our review for the first issue, feel free to pause this one, click the channel logo above, scroll through our content page, and select the review for Black Hammer Issue 1. Once you've caught up on the shenanigans there, leap back over here and resume the review of issue number 2. So this issue's inside cover blurb sets the stage differently than the first. It actually gives bare bones setup for this issue, if not the entire series. And it goes like this. Banished from their home dimension, the Golden Age heroes of Spiral City are doomed to live out eternity in an idyllic, timeless farming community. But not all is ideal. Interstellar adventurer Colonel Weird and his robot sidekick Talkie Walkie experiment with different modes of escape. Golden Gail and Barbalian brood together, while Madame Dragonfly broods in isolation, and Abraham Slam is just trying to hold the team together. In the 10 years of exile, only the Black Hammer, invincible champion of the streets, has managed to escape, though it may have cost him his life. This issue is titled The Curse of Zephram, and we start out in the Golden Age. And whether that's a reference to the actual golden age of the comics industry or that of the character Lemire chose to open on, Golden Gail, is up for debate. I'll take it as a play on both. So this issue seems to serve as a flashback origin story of Golden Gail, the Mary Marvel archetype in Black Hammer. Gail is an orphan girl who's run away from the orphanage one cold and rainy night. She happens upon a movie theater as she looks for a place to sleep. The clerk in the box office asks what she's doing out all alone, but apparently Gail was just as irascible and belligerent at 8 years old as she is when we meet her in the first issue, and true to her nature, she's brusque and rude to the clerk. Calling her by her name, he claims to be a friend who wants to see her safe and offers her a movie ticket. She looks up to ask him how he knows her name, but when she does, he's gone. Against her better judgment, she enters the creepy theater anyway. Down on the stage is a white-haired old man in flowing robes, leaning on a huge cane. In a booming voice, he says, "Gail Gibbons, are you worthy?" She asks, "Who's there?" The wizard says, "I am the wizard Zephram." She questions, "Zephram?" and is struck by a bolt of lightning. Crackling in the residual energy of the bolt, she now floats in front of the old man. Her outer garments now change to that of her Golden Gail persona. He says he's been imprisoned here in this world between worlds for eons, and now with his power safe inside her, he can be free at last. Then he collapses to the floor. Gail wants to get help, but the old wizard refuses, telling her instead he will always be with her in her heart, and she need only say his name. He urges her to say it again, and that's when we cut to present day where Gail and Abraham are out on the main road waiting for the school bus. She said the wizard's name low and to herself so Abe didn't hear. He's sending her to school again, and it plays out like that of a typical parent-child scenario. Only for us, these are superheroes living under the guise of ordinary citizens, which is kind of ironic in itself. Though not really, because, most of us who read comics on a regular basis, we see superheroes assuming ordinary citizen disguises all the time. But, for instance, in this instance, anyways, it's pretty strange considering, the circumstances they're here under. This bit is so funny in that Abraham wants so much to blend in and look normal that he just doesn't seem to get the torture Gail is going through, and I don't see why she puts up with it herself. I mean, does she really have to do what he says just because she looks like a 9-year-old girl? I mean, what would really happen to them if they had kept their heroic identities when they arrived here and went about their daily lives instead of opting for these civilian disguises? Well, I hope Lemire has some explanation for this at some point in the series. But before she gets on the bus, he tells her she smells like gin, and she asks him, how else am I going to get through this fucking charade? And off she goes. Hilarious. Lines like this made Golden Gail one of my favorite characters. Next, we find Barbalian and Talkie-Walkie in what looks like the outskirts of town, in the family truck, carrying Talkie's probe from the first issue. Talkie has dramatically refined the thrusters on it and has made the hull much more durable than the last. This is the 6th probe Talkie's constructed, but Barbalian thinks it's time for Talkie to give up trying to free them. But Talkie, as a living machine, seems impervious to the will-sapping paradigm that seems to affect the others so strongly, and insists sending the probe out beyond the perimeter of the town is their best bet at finding rescue. Barbalian just makes more irrational excuses. As an aside to what I believe is the underpinning of the narrative structure, Talkie answers Barb's skepticism by debunking what seems to be a conclusion repeatedly fallen upon by other members of their group: the pocket universe theory. This suggests to me that in the time they've been trapped in this world, several members of the team have hypothesized the reasoning behind their imprisonment and why they're not able to escape. It would have been your typical superhero discussion. Once they've all come to, regrouped, and begun to strategize a way to escape the bad guy's trap. Only here, and this is one of the conventions I like about how Lemire has set up and approached writing this series, they find not only are they seemingly unable to escape, but almost immediately they all seem to develop a rather lazy, unenthusiastic attitude towards doing so. This story is basically that of what is normally called a one-off, or typically a story that is self-contained and can be told in either a single issue or even a two-parter, but mainly done in one issue. Lemire is doing something I've often liked to see done with a lot of these superhero comic book tropes, and that is to add more drama and heighten the suspense by framing the story in a longer format. With Black Hammer, the idea seems to be to take a normally quickly resolved plot element and stretch it out in long form in order to tell another type of tale of the characters involved. This is not so much a action-oriented superhero jam fest full of crash, pow, wham, wherein the end result is brought about through fisticuffs and cool-ass fight scenes. This direction or focal point stems from an interlude that could easily take place within the pages of any new or established comic book, but with the intent of delving into the individual psyche and innermost thoughts and desires of the characters put in this situation. I say that because this world of story feels very well developed and very well thought out. On the surface, Dean Ormstrom's artwork is not highly detailed nor tightly rendered to any extent, and looks more like Mike Mignola. It's innocuous and unassuming. It's not bombastic or over the top or heavily detailed. It's kind of flat, really, and very rudimentary in its style and look. And the story is dealing with a group of superpowered beings trapped in what may or may not be some kind of Black Mercy-styled superhero or supervillain setup. Black Mercy is a somewhat famously known Superman story wherein an attempt by the villain known as Mongul to permanently or at least indefinitely remove iconoclast superhero Superman from the game board, allowing he and other random villains to continue their campaign of evil unfettered and uninterrupted by the Man of Steel. The Black Mercy is an alien plant that has these appendages that can latch onto a being and connect with their minds to find their most heartfelt desire and lock them into a fantasy world where those desires are played out for an indefinite amount of time. That's what this feels like in the overall setup of Black Hammer. The villain, whoever he, she, or they might be, in pitched battle with the heroes, may once again see their defeat approaching, and as a last-ditched attempt, or planned contingency, unleashes their ace in the hole, shunting the heroes into a seemingly escape-proof pocket universe. They are not left there to die, rather instead to live out their days in an idyllic, peaceful farming community. And as a failsafe, the villain or villains responsible for this may or may not have invoked a form of mind control or some kind of spell on them which precludes them from aggressively searching for a way to escape. This is why the majority of the team seems more content to carry out this charade of peaceful, normal living, rather than going out of their way and doing everything they can to escape. I love the theme and approach behind this book, and even if I'm wrong about several of the theories I have about it, I don't think I'll be too let down when all is revealed. This is well-written, tactically humorous storytelling. So Taki tells Barbalian that the pocket dimension theory is one he finds highly improbable of what the farm and town really are. He goes on to explain that the other townsfolk seem to come and go as they please. They all have contact with the outside world. It is only the 6 of them who are trapped there. And on that note, Taki tells Barbalian he just needs to have faith, and we get a close-up of Barbalian as he repeats the word, further pondering on it. This could be a cue telling us that he's either thinking about actual religion or Father Quinn, whom he met in the first issue. And yes, I mean thinking about Father Quinn in that way. This is Lemire's not-so-subtle way of hinting at Barbalian's sexual orientation. I mean, this was written just as the whole gender identity, gender politics issue had just gained its foothold in the comics industry, and whether by personal choice or as a condition of his contract with Dark Horse, the company that publishes Black Hammer, Lemire made this part of his story. So then Taki launches his probe. He stays in contact with it much longer than any of the ones before. It seems to be working well, until it fails. Taki can't understand it, but remains undaunted. Then we cut to a segment I found very intriguing, and it seems to be set up for the story's endgame. Madame Dragonfly, our mistress of the macabre. She has a small, standalone cabin separate from the rest of the family. She's out gathering some leaves or plants in a basket, and then returns to her cabin. There she finds Colonel Weird. He tells her he does not like it in her cabin because there are too many rooms. Now, I don't know if this is supposed to mean something much more profound in terms of their possible means of escape, the source of their imprisonment, or just some throwaway line meant to intrigue us. But it stands out because obviously her cabin is not that large, and probably has about 2 to 4 bedrooms at best. And the many rooms Weird is talking about are most likely doorways to various dimensions and realities. They're definitely something mystical. Madame Dragonfly admits there are more than you know. And I've told you before, if you don't like it, then don't pop in here like this. It's creepy. To which Weird responds, "You're creepy." What follows is even more cryptic. Exacerbated, she asks what he wants. He's worried about her. He's worried that everything they have there may be in danger. She insists she's fine, but clearly she's missed his overture. He said everything they have there may be in danger, not that she was in danger. And looking at that, it seems to me he's talking about something much bigger than her and whatever she's got going on in her cabin. But in answer to her statement, Colonel Weird tells her, "You don't seem fine. You seem distant." To which she says, "I'm distant. Please. You spend more time in that damn Parazone than you do here anymore." Now, this is the second time in 2 issues it's been stated that Colonel Weird is spending more and more time in this Parazone. But what is it? And why is the Parazone the only place Weird can teleport to, if that's even the case? Is the Parazone connected to their prison in some way? Getting back to the will-sapping magical whammy I mentioned earlier, we see early on that the team is not wholly united in their dilemma. While most of them don't seem to really care about escaping, they all seem to be isolated and set apart from one another. Any idea that reinforces the credo of defeating a group-sized enemy, particularly the one that goes divide and conquer, can wholly be applied here. If they are not all unified and together during their imprisonment, it fosters less cooperation, less meeting of the minds, putting their heads together sort of strategy that could have brought an end to their imprisonment long before now. You got characters that have splintered off into small groups of 2 or 3, or single characters like Madame Dragonfly that break off from the main group to isolate themselves in solitude instead of remaining a closely knit group of individuals striving for the same goal. Dragonfly has her own cabin away from the main house where it seems everyone else lives. Colonel Weird is spending more and more time in the Parazone, again distancing himself from his teammates, further destabilizing the opportunity to mount a harmonious effort to escape. Looking at these two characters, Madame Dragonfly and Colonel Weird, and seeing even on such a small scale what their powers are and what they're capable of, you can see that these two are probably the most powerful members of the team, and that one has the ability to teleport from within the confines of their prison to at least one or more other alternate dimensions, and also has the ability to detect and sense the many rooms in Dragonfly's cabin, which suggests other doorways into and out of their prison, and possibly to a way back home as well. The other, on a supernatural or mystic level, also possesses the ability to either sense or create these doorways into other dimensions or realities, and may even have been actively doing so since the time of their imprisonment, but there's no indication of that, and we're only in our second issue, and there isn't a whole lot of details being given about Madame Dragonfly, so again, just something else we'll have to wait and find out for. But instead of earnestly working towards finding a way out, they all seem to be under this malaise of contentment and introspective pondering. As of issue 2, we have no clue as to why Madame Dragonfly is often in isolation from the rest of the team, except for this aside. Weird tells her, "But they need you more than they need me, Dragonfly," to which she seems shocked and stammers, That's just not true. They all hate me." And that statement alone would seem to suggest the reason behind Dragonfly's self-imposed isolation. And as far as we know, it's either true or more than likely another dividing linchpin set up by their captor. There may be angst and emotional baggage that has one or two of, if not the entire team, disliking Madame Dragonfly. But as this is only the second issue, just what those issues are remain to be seen. But it just as easily could be a mindset or a paradigm set up by our mysterious nemesis to further reinforce the lack of possibility of the team's escape. Weird goes on to tell her, "Gail needs you. She's in trouble. She's in a box. There is smoke. She needs her mother." And Dragonfly is shocked and confused. Now, to me, Weird's dialogue has 2 or more meanings to it, and based upon what we've seen up to now in this second issue, it could all seem very on the nose and in reference to what's right there on the page. Meaning that carries with it a lot of subtext and foreshadowing at the hows and why of what's going on in this story. So let's start with Gail needs you. I can only assume that because of Dragonfly's mystic abilities, not to mention being one of the only other human females on the team, you can see how a female bond would be important. I mean, there's really no one else on the team Gail can relate to, although she and Barbalian seem to do well enough in keeping each other company. So, no, I think Gail needs you means Dragonfly's magic and what she can do with it. The next line, "she's in trouble," could mean her issues with the sheriff from last issue and being picked up for shoplifting. But I feel like there's more to it than that. She's in a box could mean a mental box, one set up and designed by whomever or whatever put them in this place. It seems obvious that she's in a box means something related to her current imminent state of being, deriving from this weird, idyllic landscape. There is smoke. Could pertain to her smoking, which is what it seems to reference on the surface, but I think has a much deeper meaning. Something more akin to something clouding her mind or her senses, which in turn is blocking her ability to either return to her natural grown-up state or be able to use her powers to break out of the prison they're in. And I suspect that if she were somehow able to revert to her normal grown-up self, that might negate whatever hold the power behind their imprisonment has over her and allow her to leave and make contact with the outside world, further influencing the possibility of rescue for the whole team. The line, "She needs her mother," to me means that as the heroes are pretending to be a normal family, those of them who can pass for normal humans, that is, the group has chosen to take on various roles to conceal their identities. With Abe being much too old to have a 9-year-old daughter, it fell to Madame Dragonfly to take on the guise of Gail's mother and Abe's daughter, in order to throw off suspicion from anyone in town. But I still have to ask the question, just what is it the team is hiding from? Why do they have to pretend to be this family and try to blend in and fit in with the townsfolk? Like, what harm would it do if they were to come out and say, "We're superheroes. We were sent here by an unknown force and are being held here against our will"? That's a big question, and I look forward to getting some kind of answer to it as the series continues. But for now, we'll just have to keep that on the back burner. So Weird pops out, and Madame Dragonfly is left alone to ponder his words. We leave her forlorn and saddened. One thing I want to say, though, before we move on, is that I noticed in Dragonfly's cabin is a rune of some kind, or some kind of mystic marking on her door, the symbol of an eye or something that looks very much like an eye, and I wonder as to its meaning or purpose. Is it meant to keep others out, or does she use it to watch the others going about their daily lives while trapped, or does it have a much more sinister purpose? Is she able to see back into the world they all came from? Is she able to communicate with the outside world? I guess we'll see one way or another. Next, we continue with Gail's backstory. She's remembering the Golden Age and her trials and challenges as Golden Gail. A recurring nemesis or a random villain called Sherlock Frankenstein is attacking the city from inside a giant robot. Gail's concerned and wants to change into her alter ego, but is afraid to. Becoming Golden Gail means turning back into a little girl, and she's afraid that if her high school crush, Brock Hansen, saw her like that, he'd never ask her to prom. Not only that, but if the rest of the kids at Spiral High saw her change into a little kid, they'd never stop making fun of her. Okay, hold up. Pump the brakes for a second. I'm not sure what's happening here or what Lemire is trying to say in this segment, but Gail knows she can't, or at least shouldn't, let Sherlock Frankenstein hurt people. But she's hesitant because she's worried about various people seeing her change into a little girl again. Now, I could conclude that her issue with being seen as a little kid could somehow be worse than the poor treatment women received back in the Golden Age of, say, the 40s and 50s, and that the social repercussions would be equally, if not far more traumatizing, than ignoring the situation and letting people get trampled on. But as we can see, Gail faces the same conundrum most superheroes face in a time of sudden crisis. She's a person with the powers and abilities to be able to help innocents in a time of danger, but what is her damage? Is there some law that says you must change into your superhero alter ego in front of all your peers and colleagues, proving your heroism yet ruining your private personal life? It's only issue 2, and so all the ground rules are still being laid out for us, so I'm not certain if she must say the wizard's name in front of other people, or if she can do it the more practical way and duck out of sight, change, and then enter the fray in her heroic form. I'm just kidding about that last part. As from a lifetime of reading comics, it isn't mandatory to expose your secret identity to do good in the world. So you can see why I'm confused as to why Gail would even have to think about such nonsense when lives are at stake. As brilliant as Jeff Lemire seems to be with his concepts and designs, this seems like an oddball way of making a callback to some of the campy tropes of comic books back in the Golden Age. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense at all when it's clear that, yes, as a subplot, it would seem a little creepy for a high school teenager to be able to turn into a 9-year-old little girl, regardless of having super magical powers. But it's not so much about the other kids seeing her change into a little girl. I would think it's much more about preserving a secret identity, which is why I wondered, why would Lemire allow this exposition in the first place? Also, isn't Golden Gail America's super sweetheart? So if she had no other choice but to change in front of her classmates, wouldn't that translate into her being cheered and applauded rather than made fun of and laughed at? Or maybe teenagers back then in that reality really had it in for little kids for some reason. Sure, the young are always underfoot and causing mischief, but being a kid back then must have been the worst status in life anyone could have. Clearly, all Gail has to do is find a secluded area, say the magic word, change, and then fly off and help the people of Spiral City. Now, unless she was trapped in a room with other people, with no way out and absolutely no hope of preserving her secret identity, then I can understand her fretting over exposing her secret identity to her classmates. But in the scene in question, she's clearly free to just run off, pretending to be afraid and hide like everyone else was doing. So, as she's contemplating saying the word, we cut back to present day where Golden Gail is sitting in a stall in the girls' room down in the dumps, whispering Zephram and smoking. Yep, that's right. This scene is what Colonel Weird was being all cryptic about. So Gail gets busted by the principal. Abe's called in. He plays a tired old song. Roundtree, the principal, ain't having it and is about to call child services in when in walks Mrs. Slamstein, Gail's mommy dearest. That's right, Madame Dragonfly glammed up to make herself look normal. But Mrs. Roundtree is adamant, though cordial, while insisting the authorities be contacted. Dragonfly calmly disagrees, then drops some potion in the air and chants in some foreign language. Within moments, Mrs. Roundtree becomes agreeable and compliant with their wishes. Outside, Gail is flabbergasted. Declaring the situation ridiculous, she swears that was the last time putting on that harebrained ruse. Abraham can't really say anything. Regardless of how he feels, it's just a setup that cannot go on forever. Gail is stuck as a little girl, but has been that same age and build for the past 10 years. So unless Madame Dragonfly is casting spells to erase Gail from everyone's memory every year, pretty soon people are going to begin to notice. Mrs. Slamstein begins to change back to her dragonfly guise. Abe is worried someone will see her. She tells him, not unless I want them to. She sprouts wings and prepares to fly off, as Gail lets off another barrage of ego-disparaging comments. Her final insult is that having to pretend Dragonfly as her mother is the most humiliating of them all. To which Dragonfly responds, if that were actually true, she would have killed herself a long time ago. Next time this happens, they're on their own. But Gail couldn't care less. Wow. I want to take a moment here to take notice of just how much fire and venom there seems to be between Golden Gail and Madame Dragonfly. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but it's not very often I go back and reread many of the comics I've collected over the years. Titles that most readily come to mind in that regard are the classic New Teen Titans of the 80s. I don't know, maybe there was less to steal my attention as a kid, less distractions maybe, but I reread only the best stories, the ones that were really well crafted and put together. Amazing Spider-Man was another one. There were some standout story elements that filtered sporadically throughout his title in the late 70s and 80s. But what I noticed here is one of the many things that inspired me to do videos on this intriguing series. I took note of it before, but again, upon reading it and getting this review together, it struck me. There's quite a bit of venom between Golden Gail and Madame Dragonfly. I remind myself that it's been 10 long years this group has been trapped in this reality. I think back to when Weird told Dragonfly they needed her, and she said they all hated her, and why she lives off in a cabin by herself. Could it be that Madame Dragonfly is in some way responsible for them being there? Could she maybe have been casting a spell on their nemesis, the anti-god, during the cataclysm, and something went wrong, trapping them all there? Or, after resigning themselves to their fate, did Gail come to Dragonfly and ask her for a spell to reverse the wizard's magic and change her back to normal? And did Dragonfly try and fail? Or worse, refuse? Could that be why there's such strong animosity between Gail and Dragonfly? So Abe shouts her down and gets her in the car. There's a cool, dramatic pause. Then Gail apologizes to Abe. Now Abe seems sympathetic, but then recites the same old diatribe about them trying really hard to make a life there. Now I say recites because it seems like every time any kind of resistance to their remaining in this idyllic world is threatened or comes into question, he goes into make the best of it mode. Now I don't know if I'm reading more into this than intended, but it seems like it could be something. It's like it's part of the locking mechanism that keeps them in prison there. In order for the lock to stay locked, it has to keep them all conditioned to wanting to stay, or at least not wanting to leave. There could be subliminal commands being beamed to them somehow, causing them to give up hope and escape. Now it's Gail's turn to shut Abe up. She tells him it's easier for him. He's got the farm and he's got his fling with Tammy. But this, how he sees her, how she is, in that form, is not really her. And she tells him her story, about how she went through various phases of despising the golden power, how as a teen she hated turning back into a little kid. She tells him of how as an adult it was like having her own personal fountain of youth. As long as it was just for a little while, it was great. But then they came to the farm, and her magic word didn't work anymore, and she's been stuck as the one thing she seems to hate being the most, a little kid. Taking a break for a moment, I'm guessing this. In all the years they've known each other, and in all the time they've been trapped there, that this is the first time Gail's ever told anyone the truth about her state of being. Wow. This is a really huge revelation. Did it really take 10 years for this to finally come out? If so, now I get why Abe really pushes the little kid role on Gail, and why she would go along with it. Although I still don't understand why the Hammers just couldn't be themselves in this world. Wherever they are, there doesn't seem to be any supervillainy going on, and the only family they have there are each other, so there's really no need for secrets or secret identities. I'm guessing she went along with it the first couple of years, but after so much time I can see how playing the role of an annoying 9-year-old could lose its appeal. Apparently Gail doesn't age in her golden form, so I take it they've gone by the same script every year, and every year they erase the townspeople's minds so they don't realize Gail isn't aging. Of course there is a lot we still don't know, and this is all speculation, as Lemire and crew have yet to give us the 411 on just how all this works in this odd little place. Coming up on the end of the issue, we get the meaning of this issue's title as Gail determines that the wizard lied to her. The magic word wasn't a gift, it was a curse. The Curse of Zephram. But Gail thinks that if she believes hard enough, if she just keeps saying it, it will eventually work, and she'll be herself again. And so she says it again and again and again, but nothing happens. With tears streaming down her face, Abe pulls her in, trying to console her. After a moment, she asks him What are they going to do? He's got no more answers than anyone else, so all he can do is ask if she's got any gin left. They sit in the truck as it rains for a moment. Then Gail asks Abe if he thinks he'll ever escape this place. Abe doesn't know. However, Gail's question, and the question that's been raised since the series started, is a foreshadowing of things to come. As on the last page of issue 2 we see space. Deep space. Suddenly there's a flash of light, and an object streaking from it. As it nears the Earth we can see it's one of Talkie's probes. So that's it. Issue number 2 of Black Hammer closes out on a bit of a cliffhanger, leaving us all with a big, huge question, if not the biggest question of all. Will the heroes of Spiral City ever escape this idyllic farm prison? Well, you've got another 10 issues to go. Will the answers come sooner? Will they come at all? The answers to these and other questions will be answered in the next thrilling review on the 1138 Nerd Herd. So, what did you think of this review? What did you think of the writing, drawing, or coloring in the second issue of Black Hammer? What are your thoughts, comments, questions, or complaints? Leave them all below in the comments section, and while you're there, give us a thumbs up, or, dear God, no, a thumbs down. And if you love what we're doing here in the 1138 and can't wait for more, feel free to hit that subscribe button to be notified as soon as the newest video is uploaded. Until then, take care, be safe, and most importantly, have a nice read.